The room is loud the way a room gets loud when nobody is really talking. It's a late night kind of loud. Glasses clinking too hard, laughter that goes on a beat too long, someone leaning in close just to feel like they belong to whatever is happening. Cigarette smoke hangs in layers near the ceiling, trapped under warm, low lights that make everything look softer than it is. And in the center of it, at the edge of a small crowd that keeps pretending not to stare, two men stand too close. Jackson Browne's shoulders are tight like he's holding something back with muscle instead of words. Glenn Frey's jaw moves like he's chewing on a sentence he hasn't decided to spit out yet. They're both smiling, but their smiles don't reach their eyes. There's a thin space between them, thin enough that if either one breathes wrong, it will be gone. Somebody's guitar case leans against a chair like a forgotten promise. A waitress squeezes past with a tray and keeps her eyes forward, like she's learned that the safest way to handle famous people is to act like they're not famous at all. But everyone knows something is about to break. Not a glass, not a table, a line that was drawn softly a long time ago in private, in jealousy and pride and unspoken debts. A line that has been walked up to and stepped over and stepped back from again and again because men like this, men who write songs that make other people cry, often don't know what to do with their own anger. Tonight it's sitting right between them. The crowd doesn't move in, the crowd doesn't move away. They do that careful thing people do around a fire, where they circle it just close enough to feel the heat. Someone whispers, "Oh no." Someone else whispers, "Not here." But here is exactly where it happens. Because here is where the eyes are. Here is where the stories are born. Jackson's voice is low, but the sharpness in it cuts through the noise. "Don't pretend," he says. Glenn's laugh comes out short. "Pretend what?" "You know what." Glenn's eyes flick for half a second to the people watching, then back to Jackson. He takes a sip from his drink like it's a joke, like it's nothing. Like he isn't standing with his heart beating hard enough to shake his ribs. "You're always so serious," Glenn says. "It's exhausting." Jackson's hand tightens around his own glass. He doesn't drink, he just holds it like he needs to feel something solid. "This isn't about serious," Jackson says. "This is about respect." Glenn's smile fades. "Respect," he repeats, tasting the word like it doesn't belong. There's a pause, the kind of pause that tells you this has been building for weeks, maybe months, maybe years. The kind of pause that carries old conversations, old nights, old slights that were laughed off in public and felt deeply in private. And then Glenn leans forward. "Not much, just enough. Here we go," he says. "You want to tell me what I did now? Like you're my conscience?" Jackson's eyes lift, calm on the surface, something burning behind it. "I'm not your conscience," he says. "I'm just tired." "Tired of what?" Glenn asks, and his voice rises just a little. Not a shout, not yet, just a crack in the restraint. "Tired of me existing in the same room as you?" Jackson's mouth opens. But before he speaks, someone in the crowd shifts, and the movement makes it worse, because it reminds both men that this isn't only between them anymore. It's being witnessed, it's being measured, it's being turned into a story even as it happens. Jackson sets his glass down. The sound is small but clear. Glenn watches the glass like it's a sign. "You're putting it down," Glenn says quietly. "That's dramatic." Jackson's hands come up slightly, palms open, not in surrender, in control. "Glenn," he says. Glenn's eyes narrow. "Don't say my name like that." "Like what?" "Like you're the grown-up," Glenn snaps. "Like you're above this." Jackson's face doesn't change much. But there's a flicker, hurt maybe, or just the weight of realizing that no matter how carefully you speak, someone determined to misunderstand, you will still find a reason. Jackson breathes in, and Glenn takes a step closer. Now the thin space is gone. Now it's shoulders almost touching. Now it's breath mixing. Now it's the kind of closeness that's either going to become a hug or a hit. And nobody believes it will be a hug. The place itself feels like it leans in, like the walls want to hear. Outside, the city is quiet in that late-night way, like Los Angeles is holding its own breath. Inside, everything is hot and crowded and waiting. A man near the back whispers, "Someone should stop this," but nobody moves, because stopping it means choosing a side, and choosing a side means becoming part of the story in a way you can't take back. Jackson's voice stays low. "This isn't what I want," he says. Glenn's nostrils flare. "Then why are you doing it?" Jackson's eyes lift to Glenn's. "Because you keep pushing." Glenn's laugh comes out bitter. "You think you're the only one who gets pushed?" Jackson's expression tightens. "This isn't about—" Glenn cuts him off, and now his voice is louder. People hear it clearly. "This is about what you always think it's about," Glenn says. Control, moral high ground, being the guy who feels more, the guy who cares more. Jackson's jaw shifts, and for the first time, his calm slips just enough that you can see the strain underneath. "You don't know what I care about," Jackson says. Glenn's eyes flash. "Oh, I know what you care about." The crowd stiffens, because that sentence has teeth, because it doesn't sound like a random insult. It sounds like a key turned in a lock. Jackson's shoulders rise. Glenn's hand moves, not toward a fist, not yet, but in a sharp gesture like he's swatting away the idea of Jackson's restraint. "Say it," Glenn says. "Say what you came here to say." Jackson's throat works, and then a voice from behind them, calm and steady, cuts through both of them like a hand pressed against a wound. "Enough." Not shouted, not pleaded. Just said. Both men freeze, not because they're scared, but because the voice belongs to someone they can't ignore. Linda Ronstadt steps into the circle like she owns the air. She doesn't push anyone aside. She doesn't raise her hands like a referee. She just walks in, steady, shoulders relaxed, eyes clear. Her face is serious, not angry, not dramatic. Serious like a person who has watched storms form and knows how much damage they can do if nobody changes the weather. People move without realizing they're moving. A path opens for her, the way crowds open for fire trucks or for truth. Glenn's mouth opens, ready with something sharp. Linda looks at him first, not with judgment, with recognition. And that is what makes his words die on his tongue. Then she looks at Jackson, and her gaze softens in a different way. Not pity, not approval. Just the quiet look of someone who knows him well enough to see what he's trying not to show. Linda doesn't ask what happened. She doesn't ask who started it. She doesn't ask for an explanation, because explanations are how men keep fighting while pretending they're just talking. Instead, she does something nobody expects. She takes Glenn's drink, gently like she's borrowing it, and sets it on a nearby table. Then she takes Jackson's empty hands, just lightly, fingertips to wrist, a touch that says, "You are here. Stay here." And she says, in a voice only the people closest can hear, not in front of them. It lands like a weight. Because them isn't just the crowd. It's the reporters who aren't here but might as well be. It's the managers and hangers-on and future gossip. It's the whole hungry machine that waits for famous people to break so it can sell the sound of the crack. Glenn's eyes dart to the crowd. His face shifts, not to shame, to a kind of sudden awareness that he has been performing his own anger. Jackson swallows. Linda keeps her voice low. "If you want to hurt each other," she says, "you can do it in private where it only ruins you. Not here where it ruins everyone." Glenn's brow furrows. "Linda," she cuts him off with nothing but a look, not a glare. A look that says she's not afraid of him, and she's not impressed by him, and she's not going to let him turn this into a show. Glenn's lips press together. Jackson tries to speak, but Linda doesn't let him either. She turns her face to him. "Don't explain," she says, "not now." And it's strange, the way those two words can feel like a rescue, because explaining is what Jackson does when he's cornered. Explaining is how he makes pain sound reasonable. Explaining is how he keeps himself from reaching for anger. Linda knows that. She knows him in a way that doesn't come from headlines. It comes from backstage rooms and long drives and the quiet aftermath of applause. She releases Jackson's wrists and steps back half a step, placing herself between the two men, not as a wall, but as a boundary. The room is silent in pockets now. People are holding their breath in small groups. Linda looks at Glenn again. "Go outside," she says. Glenn's shoulders lift, defensive. "Why?" "Because you're not thinking," she says, "and you're going to do something you'll regret for the rest of your life." Glenn's eyes flicker at that. Regret. The word hits differently than wrong. Wrong is an argument. Regret is a future you can already feel. Glenn's hand flexes like he wants to grab his drink back, like he wants to reclaim the ground he thinks he's losing. But Linda's posture doesn't change. She doesn't threaten. She doesn't bargain. She just stands there like the truth is simple and he's allowed to choose it. Glenn looks past her at Jackson. Jackson is still, but his eyes are alive. He's not gloating. He's not smug. He looks tired. He looks like he's been carrying something heavy, and tonight it almost slipped out of his hands. Glenn's chest rises and falls. Then he does something small, and the whole room feels it. He takes one step back, not a retreat, a pause. Linda nods once like she saw it and it mattered. She turns slightly toward Jackson. "You," she says softly. "Stay." Jackson's eyebrows lift. "Stay?" "Yes," she says. "Stay right here. Don't chase him. Don't follow. Don't keep the fire going just because it's warm." Jackson's lips part. He wants to argue. He wants to say something that sounds fair. But he doesn't. He just swallows and nods. Linda looks at Glenn again. "Outside," she repeats. Glenn's jaw works. Pride fights inside him. Pride is loud even when nobody else can hear it. But then, to everyone's surprise, Glenn turns. He doesn't storm out. He doesn't throw a chair. He doesn't slam anything. He just walks, shoulders stiff, toward the door. The crowd parts for him the same way it parted for Linda, but now it's different. Now it's quieter. People look away because looking feels like stealing something. Glenn pushes the door open and steps into the night. The door swings closed behind him. The room exhales, but the tension doesn't vanish. It just changes shape, because now Jackson is still standing there and Linda is in front of him, and all the eyes that were hungry for a fight are now hungry for an ending. Linda turns her head slightly, not looking at the crowd, but feeling it. She takes Jackson by the elbow, not pulling, just guiding, and leads him toward a quieter corner near the back, where a wall blocks half the room. Jackson walks with her like someone waking from a trance. They stop near a small table with a half-burned candle. The flame flickers in the leftover air. Linda finally speaks in a voice meant only for him. "What did you come here hoping would happen?" she asks. Jackson stares at the candle. His throat moves. "I don't know," he says. Linda waits. She doesn't fill the silence. She lets it do its work. Jackson's eyes close for a second. "I wanted him to hear me," he says finally. "Just once, without turning it into some kind of contest." Linda nods slowly. "And did you think tonight was the night he would?" Jackson's mouth tightens. "No." Linda's gaze stays steady. "Then why push?" Jackson's shoulders sink a fraction. "Because it hurts," he admits. The words come out like he hates that they're true. "And sometimes I want him to feel it too." Linda doesn't flinch. She doesn't judge the confession. She just lets it settle between them. "That's human," she says quietly, "but it's dangerous." Jackson's eyes lift to hers. "I'm not trying to hurt him." Linda's voice stays calm. "You are, not with your hands, with your pride." Jackson looks down again. His fingers tap lightly on the edge of the table, a small restless motion like a heartbeat in his hand. Across the room, people have gone back to pretending they're just having a normal night. Their laughter is softer now. Their bodies are cautious. Everyone is trying to put the moment back into a box, but the box won't close all the way. Linda watches Jackson's face like she's reading a song before it's written. "Do you know what Glenn is really afraid of?" she asks. Jackson lets out a humorless breath. "Losing?" Linda shakes her head. "Being seen." Jackson frowns slightly. "He's always seen." Linda leans in just a little. "Not like that," she says. "Not seen as a person who can be hurt. Not seen as someone who doesn't know what to do with his own heart." Jackson's eyes narrow, thinking. Linda continues, slow and careful. "Some people get loud because they're scared the silence will show everyone what they really feel." Jackson's jaw tightens again. "So what? I'm supposed to just let him swing at the air forever?" Linda's voice remains steady. "No. You're supposed to stop standing where his fear can hit you." Jackson looks at her like he wants to argue again, like he wants to say that backing away feels like losing, like he wants to say that silence feels like surrender. But he doesn't, because Linda is not telling him to be small. She's telling him to be wise. She's telling him to choose timing over impulse. Outside, the night air is cooler, cleaner, the kind of air that makes lungs feel new. Linda glances toward the door. "Stay here," she says again, quieter, almost like a promise. "I'll go talk to him." Jackson's eyes widen slightly. "Linda, don't." She lifts a hand, not stopping him, just slowing him. "I'm not going to fight him," she says. "I'm going to remind him who he is when nobody's cheering." Jackson's mouth opens, then closes. He nods once. Linda turns and walks toward the door. The room watches her go, but differently now. Not hungry, almost grateful. She steps outside. The night hits her face. The street is mostly empty, just the distant sound of a car passing, the soft hum of the city. Glenn is there, leaning against the wall near the entrance, his hands on his hips like he's trying to hold himself together. His breath is heavy, but he's not crying. Not yet. Men like him don't cry in public. They turn tears into anger and call it strength. Linda approaches slowly, giving him space. He doesn't look up at first. He stares at the ground like he's watching the last few seconds replay in the dirt. "Happy?" he says finally, voice tight. "You saved the night." Linda stands a few feet away. "I didn't save anything," she says. "I just stopped you from making it worse." Glenn lets out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, thanks, Mom." Linda's face doesn't change. "Call me whatever you want," she says, "but you know I'm right." Glenn's jaw tightens. "You don't know what he said." Linda's voice stays calm. "I don't need to," she says. "I know what you were about to do." Glenn finally looks at her. His eyes are bright, not with joy, but with the sharp edge of humiliation. Because being stopped is embarrassing when you are trying to be powerful. Linda holds his gaze. "I'm not here to pick a side," she says. "I'm here because I care about you, and I care about him, and I care about what happens when two good men decide to turn their pain into a performance." Glenn looks away again, throat working. Linda steps closer, but not too close. "Tell me the truth," she says. "What's eating you?" Glenn's laugh is quieter this time. "You always do this," he mutters. "Do what?" "Get to the middle," Glenn says, and there's something exhausted in it, like he hates that she can. Linda waits. The streetlight above them buzzes faintly. Somewhere down the block, a dog barks once, then stops. Glenn's shoulders sag a little. "I'm tired of being the bad guy," he says, almost under his breath. Linda's eyes soften. "Who told you you were?" Glenn's mouth twists. "Everyone," he says. "Every time he looks at me like I'm..." Like I'm shallow, like I don't feel what he feels, like I don't hurt. Linda takes a slow breath. Do you hurt? Glenn's jaw tightens. His eyes flick away again, and this time his voice drops lower. Yeah, he says. I hurt. Linda nods once. Then say that, she says. Not with your fists, not with your mouth, with your honesty. Glenn scoffs, but it sounds weak. Honesty gets you eaten alive. Linda's voice stays soft. Only by people who don't deserve you, she says. And Jackson isn't trying to eat you. He's trying to stop bleeding. Glenn's eyes flash. He bleeds all the time, he snaps. He makes a whole career out of it. Linda doesn't react. And you make a career out of pretending you don't, she says gently. The words land. Glenn's throat moves. His hands drop from his hips. For a second, he looks younger, like someone who hasn't learned yet how to act like nothing can touch him. He turns his head toward the door like he wants to go back in, like he wants to finish the fight just to feel control again. Linda notices and speaks before he can move. If you go back in there ready to win, she says, you'll lose something you can't get back. Glenn's voice is rough. Like what? Linda looks at him, steady and unblinking. Your own respect, she says. Not his, yours. Glenn swallows hard. He blinks fast, once, twice, like he's clearing smoke from his eyes. He looks down at his hands. They were watching, he says quietly. Linda nods. Yes, she says, and one day you'll be watching yourself in your memory. That's worse. Glenn lets out a long breath. The kind of breath that sounds like it's been trapped for years. I didn't want to hit him, he says. Linda's voice is barely above a whisper now. I know. Glenn's jaw trembles slightly, just a tiny crack. He starts, then stops. Linda waits again, letting silence be the place where the truth can stand up. Glenn's voice comes out small. I'm scared he's right about me, he admits. Linda doesn't move. She doesn't rush to comfort him with easy words. She just stays there, letting him hear his own confession in the open air. Then she says, he's not right about you, but you can prove him wrong without punishing him. Glenn's eyes close for a second. When he opens them, they're wet. Not tears falling yet, just the shine of them. What do I do? He asks. And it's the first time all night he sounds like he actually wants an answer. Linda turns slightly toward the door. You go back in, she says. And you don't explain. You don't defend. You don't attack. You just lower your shoulders. Glenn gives a short, humorless laugh. That's it? Linda nods. That's it, she says. A man lowering his shoulders is sometimes the bravest thing in the room. Glenn stares at her like he wants to argue, but he can't find the energy. Finally, he pushes off the wall. His movements are slower now, not stiff with pride, heavy with something else, fear maybe, but also relief, like he's tired of carrying the role he thinks he has to play. Linda walks beside him. They step back inside. The room notices instantly. Conversations soften. People pretend to be busy, but their eyes pull toward Glenn like magnets. Jackson is still in the corner near the candle, sitting now, his hands folded, staring at nothing, like he's trying to calm the part of him that wanted to do something reckless. Linda leads Glenn toward him, not to force a reunion, not to stage a moment, just to let the next choice happen. Glenn stops a few feet from Jackson. Jackson looks up. Their eyes meet. And in that look there is a question neither one wants to ask out loud. Are we really going to do this? The air feels thin again. Glenn's mouth opens. Everyone expects sharp words. Everyone expects sarcasm. Everyone expects the fight to return with a different shape. Instead, Glenn does something simple. He nods once, not a dramatic bow, not a show, just an acknowledgement. Then he speaks, and his voice is low enough that only Jackson and Linda and maybe one or two people nearby can hear. I got carried away, Glenn says. Jackson blinks. The sentence doesn't fit the script Jackson has been preparing for years. Glenn's throat tightens. He forces the next words out, not smooth, not polished. "I don't want to be that guy," he says. Jackson's lips part, but he doesn't speak yet. Because Jackson is realizing something in real time, the apology is real, and real things are harder to hold than anger. Glenn's eyes flick to Linda for a fraction of a second, like he's borrowing her steadiness. Then back to Jackson. "I'm sorry," Glenn says. The room doesn't cheer, nobody claps. That would ruin it. But you can feel something move through the crowd like a slow wave. People's shoulders drop, people exhale, people look away because they suddenly feel like they were almost watching something private. Jackson's face shifts, not into victory, into something more complicated. He nods slowly. "Thank you," Jackson says, voice quiet. "That's all. No speech, no lecture, no taking the moment to prove a point. Just 2 words that say he received it." Glenn swallows. He looks like he wants to add something, like he wants to explain himself, like he wants to make sure Jackson understands all the reasons, all the pain. But Linda is watching him, and he remembers what she said outside. Don't explain, don't defend, don't attack. Glenn nods again, once. Then he turns slightly, stepping back, not running away, just giving space. Jackson watches him go, and his hands unclench. Linda stands between them for one more heartbeat, then steps aside, letting the space exist without being dangerous. The night doesn't snap back to normal. It can't. Something has changed shape. Later, people will try to retell it like it was a near brawl, like it was wild and dramatic, like chairs flew and punches landed. But the truth is quieter. The truth is a man stepping back from his own pride. The truth is another man not chasing him. And the truth is Linda Ronstadt, steady as a metronome, refusing to let pain become entertainment. As the hours move on, the room fills back in with sound. Someone laughs again, but softer. Someone starts a song in the corner, gentle picking on a guitar. The notes float through the smoky air like a question that doesn't demand an answer. Jackson stays near the candle for a while, staring into the small flame like he's watching the last few minutes burn down. Linda sits across from him without asking. "You okay?" she asks. Jackson doesn't answer right away, then he nods once. "I almost wasn't," he admits. Linda's gaze stays on him. "But you were," she says. Jackson's eyes flick up to hers. "Because you stepped in." Linda shrugs slightly like it isn't a big deal, but her eyes are tired. Tired in the way that comes from being the one who keeps people from breaking when they don't know how to stop themselves. "I stepped in because I've seen what happens when you don't," she says quietly. Jackson looks down. "He meant it," he says, almost surprised. Linda nods. "He did," she says. Jackson swallows. "I didn't want to forgive him that fast," he admits. Linda leans back slightly. "I know," she says. "Forgiveness doesn't always feel good at first. Sometimes it feels like losing your right to be angry." Jackson's fingers trace the edge of the table. "Yeah," he says. "It does." Linda's voice is gentle. "But you kept your dignity," she says. "That's not nothing." Jackson looks toward the room where Glenn is now talking with someone near the bar. Glenn's laughter is there, but it's different, less sharp, more careful, like he knows he almost became a person he doesn't want to be. Jackson's gaze lingers. "What happens now?" he asks. Linda watches him. "Now you go home," she says, "and you sleep. And tomorrow you'll still have all the same problems, but one less wound." Jackson nods slowly, and when he stands, he pauses, looking across the room again. Glenn notices. Their eyes meet one more time. Glenn nods once. Jackson nods back. No smile, no friendship declared, no clean ending. Just 2 men recognizing a moment where they could have destroyed each other and didn't. The crowd slowly forgets how close it got. Not because it wasn't real, but because people want their legends messy. They want the story to end with fists or shouting. They want proof that the pressure of fame always breaks a person in the most dramatic way. But sometimes the pressure breaks in a softer place. Sometimes it breaks in the throat, right before a cruel word is said. Sometimes it breaks in the hand, right before it swings. Sometimes it breaks because someone steps in and refuses to let pride be the loudest voice. As Jackson walks out into the night, the air is cooler than he expects. It touches his face like a reminder that the world is bigger than one room, bigger than one fight, bigger than one bruise to the ego. He stands for a moment on the sidewalk, not moving, listening to the muffled sound of music behind the door. He imagines briefly what it would have looked like if Glenn had hit him, if he had hit Glenn back, if someone had pulled them apart while cameras flashed and people shouted their names like a chant. He imagines the next day, the rumors, the stories, the phone calls, the apologies that wouldn't mean anything because the damage would already be done. Then he imagines what actually happened. A nod, a quiet apology, a woman standing between them, not asking for attention, not asking for credit, just doing what needed to be done. Jackson exhales, and in the breath you can hear something loosen. Not all of it, not the whole knot, but enough. Enough to go home without carrying the shape of a fist in his chest. Inside the bar, Linda stays a little longer. She watches Glenn from a distance. Glenn looks up once, like he can feel her gaze, and he gives a small, almost embarrassed half-smile. Linda doesn't smile back in a big way. She just nods, the smallest nod, not approval, not forgiveness, just recognition, because she knows what it costs a person to step back from their worst self when everyone is watching. Later, long after the crowd leaves and the lights dim, the story will drift through music circles the way smoke drifts through curtains. People will say there was almost a fight. People will say Linda stopped it. People will say it like it's a fun piece of drama, like it's a wild night to laugh about. But for the three people who stood in that thin space between pride and regret, it won't be funny. It will be quiet. It will be the memory of a moment that could have changed everything in the ugliest way, and instead changed something in a way nobody could photograph. A moment where the strongest thing in the room wasn't a punch, it was a pause. And the sound, so soft it almost didn't count, of two men choosing not to become the story everyone was waiting for. And if you could hear the last thing that lingered in the air after the door finally closed and the night swallowed the noise, it wouldn't be shouting. It would be the faint echo of Linda's voice, steady and low, cutting through smoke and pride like a line drawn in the only place that matters. Not in front of them,